Thomas Park here. Just sharing some thoughts I've been having. I'm trying to sort of sort out some confusions I still have about just the world around me and my role in it, and some questions that have bothered me. And I think I came to a point that I feel might have some helpfulness to it. Maybe it has some truth behind it. It has to do with this idea of ubiquity. And so ubiquity, as I remember, is about this case where a person is amongst many other people and so doesn't have a particularly protrudent value. In other words, a person is part of a larger group of people who are similar enough that they tend to blend in with the group or counted amongst it as one of many who are similar rather than as a unique person. Now, I mean to say, of course, I view myself as unique. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe my relationship with God is unique. I believe that people in my family and friends are unique, and I value them. But in general, I don't think the world as a whole values me or gives me any more time or respect than it would to anybody else. And I think a lot of my energy, because I did get into the arts, into music, and also some other things, I was kind of asking myself, what am I going to accomplish by doing this? Do I expect to be like a famous musician or a great thinker, etc.? And I kept thinking, where is the ceiling and what am I trying to do here? And I think I realized that, as I get older, I'm just more defining the limits and getting comfortable with them. That I think what the truth is really that I'm ubiquitous as a person in this world, even as a musician, and that it's going to be very difficult for that to change. Now, people would keep saying something like, "Well, don't give up," but there's a lot of reasons. One is, of course, the big stadium bands don't come along much anymore, and rock and roll's changed a lot, and now almost everybody has their rig and set at home they can play, and that's kind of neat, actually, I think. When I worked in the music studio at the library in St. Louis, a lot of young kids were putting together rap singles, and they were basically would include their home street and address and the kinds of parties they like to go to. And the idea was to usually pick up girls, or if it was women, to pick up guys. It was a very local phenomenon. Hip-hop was huge in St. Louis, but the kids were basically writing little ads for themselves and the parties they wanted to go to and the people they wanted to meet. So the reason I bring this up is because a lot of people may devote a lot to their communities, and they may devote a lot to the arts. But what I tend to come across, at least myself, is sort of this wall of ubiquity, where most of those people will probably not be recognized, at least for too long, if at all, or significantly in any bigger picture. People might even win a medal for something, a war act of heroism in a war, but only a few medals are really recognized in the larger scene. But that sounds like I'm evaluating it, but what I'm saying is because of the ubiquity of life, that people don't tend to know, remember, or pay attention to those things other than the ones who are directly involved. Now, that, I hope you don't see that I'm the person who made this way. I think it's a reality of life. I think we live in a reality where most people are treated by people they know a certain way, but we shouldn't expect the world at large to give us more value than they would anyone else. And the more I live, the more I see we're probably not very much noted much at all as individuals, and maybe that's okay, because I think there's definitely a bright side to ubiquity. One would be the potential for privacy. That the concerns and causes that might make you get on kind of a horse and ride it and make a big cause could be viewed in another way as just elements of private thoughts and resistances that you feel. Again, not to take the air out of people's tires, but just to warn them that most of us are ubiquitous anyway and have heard about such horse riding and dragon jousting and windmill results and falling off the horse and the lance breaking. And so it's just ubiquity. I just think it's the case that most creative people, most artists, most non-creative people, most people are ubiquitous. Even famous people may not really mean that much to fans because we don't really know them personally. And, a lot of times I hear about how famous people die of illness or even kill themselves, and it's sad. But the case is they're human beings just like us. And they had their depressions and their issues. Amy Winehouse, I keep thinking about her, how she drank herself to death, having been very clear and warned us all that she was going to do it. And the world in its ubiquitous nature kind of responded as the world does, and she didn't listen either, and she didn't survive. So I guess my caution is, or I guess what I will take as a caution for myself is, there's a story in the gospel where Jesus was tempted by the devil, and he was standing on a tall building, and the devil whispered to him, "Why don't you jump off this building, and your angels will catch you?" And what Jesus said was, God is not to be tested. And so this is really interesting because, well, one thing, I wondered if maybe Jesus was suicidal, if that was a way of telling a story where that person had become sad or depressed and felt upset about life. I don't know, possibly. But the other important thing is to not test that theory. In other words, he didn't want to test how important he was by forcing people to acknowledge that. He didn't want to make a spectacle of himself and force and assume that God or those around him would care, because he felt that that was unwise, and ascribed to a more ancient piece of wisdom, which is to not test God. And I would add, perhaps not other people either, honestly. The angels, of course, are always very busy, singing and helping, and they're not likely to have free time, just any time, to save Jesus or people like them when they jump. And he shouldn't test it either. It's not worth testing it, so why do that? Why endanger one's life to test that theory? It does seem to be a wise response he gave. There was another scene in the Chronicles of Narnia where one of the characters was, there was a book on this magic island, I think, and there was a page that said, if you read this page, you can know what other people think of you. And as she begins to turn to it, there's this painting of a lion who's Aslan, who's, I guess, I suppose the god figure, growls and threatens her. And she intuits and learns that she should not want so much to know what others think of her, to find some mystical way to find out. And it's a similar logic that you don't need to test that theory. Frankly, sometimes people might ascribe you value, and sometimes they might be irritated. And as a whole, I think the general experience of life as I get older is that although there are those who love me and those I love very much as always, as a whole, the world must be ubiquitous and treat me as just one of many, because it's the truth. I am one of many to this world. This world has over 7 billion people, and I'm one of them, and that's the truth. And also that there are limited resources in this world. And so why would I always want to be one, or suspect I'm one, who to such a large group of people would have a certain significance other than being one of those people? So then I would begin to think of myself more as I am someone who lives on this world like others, and I live in my neighborhood as others do. I feel unique because I believe that, but I don't want to test that with others. Hey, have you heard of the new guy who moved down the street? Whoa, no, I don't want anyone to think that at all. I don't even want them to bother with it. I hope they don't knock on the door. Whew. Honestly, I value my privacy, I value my free time, And I think that if people are questing to find where the ceiling is in terms of value or fame, for many of us it may be fairly low, and it's because of ubiquity. There isn't the interest and there aren't the resources. And more for me, there's no motivation to be anyone other than who I am, living where I do, and not having this limitless significance or fame beyond it. Now, I don't know. If someday someone decides that what I'm talking about is helpful, that's what it's meant to be, is helpful. But it may not it may not happen, and it's very likely that it won't, and I'll go on living anyway. When I think about my relatives, there aren't too many who sit around talking about things the way I do. That's because they've always known that they were ubiquitous and they had a firmer grasp on that. And I keep testing it. That's because, well, I don't know why. I persist. I test too much. I'm so Croatian. Someone's making a real bitter drink for me somewhere. I better be careful. Anyway, probably not. They don't even care that much, and there's no time to make the drink. That's because I'm ubiquitous, and I'm free from even the fame of Socrates. You knew that, right? I knew that too. So, for those who have tried to share and crusade and change the world, I wish you the best of luck. Don't let me discourage you. But my experience personally has been, no matter how hard I try, there is generally a sense of ubiquity where I'm simply one amongst many others who live and die and try the best I can. And I think that accepting truth is finding peace with that. And I think I'm feeling more peace every day with it. And so anyway, you may decide as you do. And I hope you can find some comfort in ubiquity and even some joy in privacy and local activity and those things that are available to you, and that you have as happy a day in life as you can. As for me, I wouldn't count on going beyond ubiquity, in my view anyway, unless I haven't seen things the way they are, which could be. But anyway, I'm going to stop babbling on and sign off here. Thomas Park on Ubiquity.